underlying problem, which would be interesting to know what would be the underlying problem. So, if we talk about the causes of brain drain, you will have two perspectives that you have to take into account. You have to take into account what is called pull factors, and you have to take into account what is called push factors. So, factors determining this phenomenon in this sense. So when we talk about push factors, these are predominantly negative effects, effects that lead to a person leaving a country for another. In this case, you can think about unemployment, could be something that would push somebody to leave the country, but also political instability, the absence of research facilities, employment discrimination, economic underdevelopment, or even a lack of freedom. And you can imagine when you live on an island, the surface area is quite, let's say, small. So that could also have an impact on what you perceive as where you want to be. And also, another push, let's say, factor is considered poor working conditions. So, what are the additional benefits you get in your job? Do you have a nice working space, and so forth and so forth? So these are called push factors, condition that would stimulate somebody to leave the country they're living in for another country. Then you can go over to what we call pull factors. So pulling the person towards you as a country. Obviously, something that's very important is higher paying jobs. It's considered a pull factor, but also a superior economic outlook. You know, things are going to go good. There's a new investment being made. There's investment being done in research. So you'll see that a country is moving to a certain direction, and that pulls you to be part of that movement as well. Stable political environment is also important, but also a modernized educational system, support for training, intellectual freedom, richness in culture. All these factors are considered pull factors for you to want to go to countries that have this in abundance. So this is, if you want to consider what is the underlying cause or what could be the underlying cause of this phenomenon, brain drain, then you could have to take into account that you have to talk about pull factors and push factors. And I would invite you to think of what to you is considered a pull or a push factor when you consider the urban context, because I would be very interested in finding out your perspective in this matter as well. So going back to what I said in the beginning, that it's generally considered as a problem, we want to, stand still at this point and ask ourselves, is it actually a problem? And then based on the same research done and the work done by Dr. Astley of the World Bank, you'll see that the reason why it's considered a problem is that the phenomenon of brain drain can greatly affect the economy of the country in which the people are leaving towards other country. You can think about things as loss of tax revenue. You can think about things as a shortage of skilled workers, but also what is very important for the development of a country is loss of innovative ideas. You need these ideas to continue being resilient, and when you don't have the individuals thinking about these ideas, then you don't have the capacity of becoming. Could you not have the capacity of becoming more resilient? Um, what they do say is that although it's generally considered a problem, what you do have is that skilled people living abroad also can contribute to their original countries by having strong ties with them, or also by stimulating foreign direct investment. So you have let's say, a passion for Aruba, but you're living in the Netherlands, you're starting a business, or you have investors that are interested. Because of this passion, you can also guide them towards certain investments in your country. So that kind of brings forward a nuance regarding the subject, although in general, you could consider that the effects are perceived as negative in general. So this is actually what has come forward from Dr. Ashley of the World Bank. I would recommend also to Google her, since she has quite some interesting interviews and also, I believe, a report. And also, should you want the details, I will ask the Futura team members to provide you with this. Then I would want to go over to factual findings, and this is specifically the study that's been conducted by an Arubian gentleman, Jonathan Upichu. He has done this study, and it's called Return Migration of Aruban Students. And if I'm not mistaken, Jonathan has a master's of economics, so this was his focus. What I found interesting of his thesis, what was brought forward, is that he looked at a certain aspects for the urban context. He first looked at if students are returning to Aruba after their studies. He also looked at what are the determinants for them moving from the Netherlands towards to Aruba. And also, he explored if the government policy of providing a break of 30% on your overall student loan had an effect, had a stimulating effect, was a pull factor for urban students to return to Aruba. And regarding the reasons for returning, what was also interesting is that he explored not only the economic aspects, but also the social aspects of it and found some interesting things. One of the pull factors for students from Aruba to go back to Aruba, as we've interpreted from the study, is the social aspect of having this feeling of safety and comfortableness that was found important, but also the need to want to contribute to the Aruban society, which, for instance, in my case, was actually one of the pull factors as well. This need to want to contribute to your country. Decisions that negatively affect the student's decision of returning. So the push factors were obviously the future of labor. Are you able to get a job on Aruba? Are you at the right place? Do you receive the right information? Do you get the right opportunities compared to maybe in this case the Netherlands? Um, what also was a push factor for Aruba, but then a pull factor for other countries is this great sense of adventure. Also, you want to go out into the world, you want to see other countries. Let's go live in New York, let's go live in London, and all of that. So that is also characteristic for being a push factor from Aruba. And I think if we talk about the Aruban community, one thing I believe is that we are very adventurous, and I think you could put us anywhere in the world, and we will make it in that sense. Um, Another aspect that was found important for reasons for going back to Aruba in a positive way, if the partner would be, let's say, willing to do so, was the partner's willingness to want to go. So if you have a partner, you're married, or if you're a girlfriend or you have a boyfriend, that their willingness to move also positively would influence your decision to go to Aruba if they wanted to go themselves. So that was very interesting in that sense. Regarding the reasons also, so if you talk about push and pull again of students not staying in the Netherlands, is also the difficulty of getting a job in the Netherlands. So maybe you did not have the intention of coming back to Aruba yet because you still wanted to explore, but you had difficulty finding a job in the Netherlands. And that is something that is also considered in that case a pull factor for Aruba, that people would come back here. And I would like to actually at the end want to get back to that point because that's a personal experience of myself. Regarding the student that what could be said about this is that there was no specific, let's say, extra stimulation based on the 30% reduction of your overall student loan, as we interpreted it from the study of Jonathan. This study is also available online. Should you want to be interested in exploring this more, you could definitely, I would make sure to let the team members of Futura do this. I believe we have one table that provides information of the students going to the Netherlands in 2010. This is just for reference purposes. The Department of Education, as well as the department at Aruba House, is busy gathering additional data for it to be more up to date. But you could see that the number of students migrating for educational purposes in, for instance, 2010 was 317. And if you consider that about 20 to 27% would return, you would see that you would be talking about indeed a significant amount of people not returning. However, like I said, I'm not an expert in the subject, so should you be interested in finding out more, I would gladly recommend for you to explore the thesis that Jonathan Upehu has written. So lastly, before I have my concluding remarks, I want to go back to what Dr. Ashley from the World Bank has said regarding policy recommendations. So what can you do as a country, maybe even as an individual, to curb a brain drain? And of course, there are some long-term, some short-term things you can do. In the end, there's no way around it. If you want to talk about curbing brain drain, a long term plan that you have to have is strong governance. You need to provide the trust, you need to be embodiment of that for people to want to come back to the country that you're from. Strong institutions and also good availability of public service is considered an important aspect on the long term to curb the brain drain. So, what can you do on a short term, as recommended by Dr. Asley? You can make public sector jobs more attractive. You can generate jobs in the private sector as well that are also more attractive, but also you can actively engage and stay engaged with the your local community abroad, the community in the diaspora. um, Going back to also what was found important is to further explore what possible tax incentives you can provide for people returning to Aruba. You can imagine that when you study and you finish your studies, if everything goes well, you come back and you want to maybe build a house, start a family. These are, starting costs, and depending on where you come from or what your background is, not everyone would have, let's say, a lot of capital to buy a house or a lot of capital to buy a car. So tax incentives could stimulate you to come back because it helps you start off as a young professional. So that is one. I wanted to just pause a little bit at the part of public sector jobs being more attractive. Depending again from where you are and what your perspective is. In my case, for instance, I've worked for the public sector for the past 5 years. And before this, I did not have a good or clear idea of what the work entails. You'll have people talking about, the public sector is slow, the public sector is too big, you have people that don't do a lot, and so forth and so forth. But what I can say from my experience is that I've never worked as hard as I ever have in my life working for the public sector, and it is complex work. It's not easy, but it's definitely rewarding work, and I feel that we should bring that more forward. I believe that if you want something, if you're proactive, but you can also take a hit because it's when you're in the public sector, your target group is not a specific type of client. Your target group is everybody, and it's very difficult to please everybody. So you're gonna be on the losing end, but that just requires stamina and just a love for the country and for the work itself. So talking about making public sector jobs more attractive. And then lastly, if we would go back to why people would leave the Netherlands to come to Aruba. In my case, for instance, I had two aspects. One was a pull factor and one was a push factor. Push factor was I finished my studies in 2011, and then you had the labor market crisis in the Netherlands. And when you finish your studies in the Netherlands, you kind of feel like you're James Bond in the sense of course I'm going to get a job. I have a diploma. I can do anything. And then in my case, I ended up 8 months looking for a job, and at the end of it I was like, I'm never going to get anything. And then I decided, you know what, I think it's time to move to Aruba and see what opportunities are there. So that was one push factor from the Netherlands. But for me specifically, also a pull factor has been the urban environment. I remember on a Sunday morning going to Parque Aricok, the sun was going down, and I saw what was around me for the first time again and thought, why am I not living here? I need to go do something with this. And that was an incredible pull factor going back to Aruba in my case. So I can definitely recognize what Jonathan has registered in his thesis in this sense. So that is shortly a little bit of the background. Like I said, I based this information on Dr. Ashley of the World Bank and Jonathan Upehu. And I hope this was interesting for you. And I look forward to receiving your feedback and your perspective on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I don't know what's happening with my screen. Indra, I really appreciate you giving us that overview of the theory, also talking about those push and pull factors in your personal experience. And from your research, my question is, what do you believe is the biggest push factor for Aruban staying abroad?
If you talk about push factors, so what is Aruba not doing properly? I think indeed is maintaining the contact with the diaspora in the Netherlands is one, but also not communicating perhaps properly or more aggressively the opportunities that are here. And of course, you are competing because when you are on a small island and you've lived here all your life, depending on how you are, but in my case, you cannot wait to leave because you're like, I'm going to go all in the world. I'm going to make things happen. I'm going for adventure. In my case, I was just thinking, I'm going to Amsterdam and buy everybody, you know? And that was great. And I loved every second of it, even the hard parts. But also our sense of value and our sense of valuing what this island is and what it represents, I believe we should do a better job or more intensely communicate it to get people excited to come back. I think the biggest adventure, and maybe I'm very old fashioned right now, is to make it on Aruba. Forget New York. If you can make it on Aruba, I think you can make it everywhere. But that's my opinion.
So this is the perfect opportunity to raise your hand if you have any questions for Indra. You can click on that digital hand and let us know that you have a question and we will unmute you so you can ask. In the meantime, you touched on that personal experience, and now that you're looking back, what would you say your experience has been, and that do you regret it? Do you think it's the best decision you've made?
You know, I'll be very honest. Some days, when when you have a tough day and the island's very small, I could think, why am I here? Why am I not going back to the Netherlands? Because this and that. But then I realized wherever you're going to have people, you're going to have challenges, and it's about overcoming those challenges. But what I can say, and this is of course personal for everyone, but a good day here is for me like a real good day because I feel really good because I did something or I contribute to something. And I believe that if you are a builder, so you like to build things, Aruba, you have to be a builder. It's conceptual, but you have to build a lot of things because there's a lot of space for growth. And if that is your driving force, then that is something that would make it worthwhile here. And even if it's difficult sometimes because it's a small island, I do not regret the decision of coming back. Absolutely not.
All right, thank you, Indra. We have a question from Ryan Marapin. I'm allowing you to talk. You can unmute yourself now.
Hi, thank you, Daniela. So can everybody hear me? I'm not sure if my mic is on, but I think I see it moving. So let me know if you can hear me. Okay. So Indra, first of all, thank you very much for what you've said so far. Very interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have you also spoken about the political situation on the island, how that may affect students' willingness to come back? Because I can imagine that, let's say, if you want to secure your job, but then maybe due to your political views, you may not be likely to get a job because of the government that's currently in place.
Thank you, Ryan, for that question. And indeed, this was also considered, and not only for the urban context, but also in general, this was considered as a push factor. And we will have to say the things the way they are. That is a push factor as well on Aruba. I think everybody has their own realities regarding to a political situation, but indeed, that is one of the reasons people would hesitate to come back to Aruba in that sense.
Thank you,
Was
Ryan.
this a big factor or not so relevant? Like if it's a big factor, then I can imagine that that's probably one of the harder things to change, but would still be nice if we can see some progress on that side.
No, absolutely. And what I can say is in the study of Jonathan, I would recommend to review that as well. But what you see in general is that for the long-term planning, so if you want to, let's say, systematically change the political aspect as a push factor and maybe it becoming a neutral factor, that is part of a long-term planning, and that implicates that it's not only very present, but also it's one of the most complex things to do in that sense. And I believe that for Aruba, it would not be any different in that sense.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. I have another question from Celia Kuzmus. I'm allowing you to talk. Go for it. Can you speak?
Hi. I had a question about the duo laning, since most people who leave Aruba, they get duo, and how that fits into everything involving the brain drain. Because I know personally, when I went to study, I planned on staying in Holland for a while so I could pay off some of that debt. Because I know the amount that you borrow from Holland is a lot bigger than the amount you borrow from Aruba. And that's why I can imagine why the 30% doesn't have that much of an influence on people.
I have to say I do not have specific information on the duo aspect, and indeed, often for a lot of people, the amount you lend from the duo is more. And I can imagine I am here, I'm paying my duo, and when I see the conversion from the euro to florin, it's every month a surprise. Well, not a surprise, of course not, but it's a reality, because sometimes when you study, you lend and the realization comes afterwards. And I can imagine that if you are able to work a little bit longer and earn in euros and be able to pay up that debt a little faster, that could be a stimulating factor. But in this sense, I'm not able to say if that was also research. But perhaps we could ask Jonathan as well.
Thank you, Celia. And we have one last question before we move on from Juan Pablo Aguirre Broca. I am giving you permission to speak. On Zoom, not.
Yeah. Hi. I was wondering if what do you think about the following, that on Aruba, we're focusing a lot on the brain drain of Arubans leaving Aruba, which is, of course, the main, let's say, the main definition behind this term. But how do you think that we can also attract, let's say, brains that are not only Arubans? What is your take or your view on this?
Juan Pablo, thank you very much for that question. That's actually an amazing question. I think indeed that is, I mean, when we talk about economic diversification, which is something that we've been talking about for a long time on Aruba, and I understand if I look at from the governmental perspective, when you have a tourism industry that's been going on for 30, 40 years, making that switch towards a different industry in which you want to attract highly skilled individuals is not going to be easy. And certainly, I believe it's not going to happen in 5 years. But I think that now, especially after, or not after, sorry, during the COVID pandemic, it has become super important and also very clear to us that there, there is a different direction that needs to be taken. We need to make that innovation leap. We need to be able to dare to make that step towards the future, and that would be, in my perspective, indeed focusing on highly skilled individuals. Are we willing to open up our research capabilities? Are there other, for instance, services that we can provide internationally and also locally that are focused on highly skilled individual? I believe the tourist sector has been the driving force for our economy, and I believe that all those people working in the tourist sector work very hard because it is a tough job. To maintain. If you talk about a housekeeper or maintenance, these are physical jobs, and I do not want to discard the importance of that, but going towards a balance between the amount of people that do the practical labor and the amount of people that are focused on the more let's say information focused jobs, because I would not want to make the distinction between highly skilled or low skilled. I would like to say practically inclined, and then the other ones are more information focused or service focused on an informational level. I believe it's a matter of making that step and not only saying, well, we're just going to close down tourism and then let's hope for the best. It has to be really well planned out. And actually, an idea could be to see how within a sector that exists that we know, because we know tourism, that's what we do, how can we elaborate and open up a little bit more our scope, that we not only focus on the practical employers, but open up this sector, diversify within the sector to attract highly skilled individuals on, let's say, an information level. And of course, that comes down to not only political will, but it also comes down to the will within the private sector. Are we willing to change our business model? Because it's difficult to change it as long as it works, because why would you? But now I think with COVID, we realized we have to. So definitely, I believe that that is the direction that we should be going, but with a good plan. With a good plan.
Thank you, Indra. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that research and breaking it down for us so we're able to digest it. Right now, we will have our second poll, so that will pop up on your screen. And please just take a couple seconds to answer those questions. All right, thank you. So the question was, what would motivate you to move back to Aruba? And the biggest answer was a job in my field. So that is something interesting to consider when looking at the push and pull factors for moving to Aruba. I would now like to introduce our second speaker, who will talk about the District 297 organization. Her name is Marilinda Cruz, and she's the project manager for District 297, and she is an agile coach. Marilinda, take it away.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for the introduction. You've seen me before for a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit more about District 297 today. And I really liked Indra's explanation on what brain drain is and explaining some policies to mitigate this. I'm very happy to announce actually that District 297 is actually one of these policies to mitigate brain drain. That is connectivity. That is what we're here to do. District 297 aims to connect people, ideas, and opportunities around the globe. Specifically, we're actively trying to connect the Aruban diaspora with local Arubans and local Aruban institutions and businesses. Through these connections, we try to foster collaborations, which we hope will lead to some knowledge transfer. And this goes both ways. So it's not to just assume that Arubans locally can only learn from people in the diaspora, but the diaspora can also learn about local challenges and things that are happening locally, which are also great successes. So in this way, we're trying to connect people with the country of origin. In this case, it's Aruba. The more people are connected to Aruba, the more easier it also becomes to come back. To that, I saw your question, Chris, which is, what is about the, having a network here? This is something that we're trying to work on. I will explain a little bit more about how this works. We're trying to create these valuable connections which puts Aruba on the map and creates more local opportunities. We have our webinars through this. This is a connectivity platform for us. So we're not just here to share information we're ideating with you as well. But we also hope that you meet each other on this platform And we used to do this in-person events before the pandemic, which makes it easier, of course, to meet and and maybe collaborate or learn about each other, especially through the chosen topics. So you're all here today because you're interested in this topic, and every time we have a different group of people attending our webinars, depending on the topic that we choose. We also like to make connections, so based on ideas. Through our partner program, we have a partner program called 100 Innovations. We have local Aruban entrepreneurs apply with their ideas, and from Aruba Futura Foundation, we try to help them from ideation to a project or a business. And through the District 297 pledge that we've been having, we try to find mentors or collaborators for these local entrepreneurs. It's a new way to broaden their network and find them the help that they need, or the boost that they need to get their idea off the ground. In this way, of course, we hope that not only their project gets off the ground, but it's also a way for the diaspora to connect with them, and maybe this creates opportunities for diaspora to come back to Aruba as well. Finally, through our platform, we're trying to connect you through real jobs. So I will be showing you our platform in a bit. We originally really wanted to launch today, but I think it will be next week, but I can still show you what it's going to do, and I hope you get excited to join. We are aiming to get Aruban businesses on the platform so that they can add their internship opportunities, vacancies, and collaboration opportunities. And we're doing this to close the information gap. In my experience, when I wanted to move to Aruba, or rather, I had actually the same story as Indra, is that I graduated in 2012, and it wasn't really good then either with the aftermath of the financial crisis. So I ended up getting a job in Aruba. But how I got the job was through my network. So I was lucky enough that I knew someone that knew of a vacancy that was fitting for me as an economist at the time. So I finished my studies in economics. But had I not had this person, I don't think I would have ever known about this job position. I don't know if it appeared in the newspaper, but you're living in the Netherlands, you're not reading local newspapers. Now you have more online options, of course, but it becomes very difficult to know about existing opportunities, especially as a graduate. So what we're trying to do is bridge this information gap and have everyone put their vacancies and internship opportunities on our platform, so that the diaspora can easily find it. So we are geared towards the diaspora. We are also having asking you to be part of the platform so that companies can also search for you. So either if for an internship or for a job opportunity. Let's say, for example, we're looking for a developer, and well, let's say there are no available developers on Aruba, but maybe there's an available developer in our diaspora network. And this is where we would ask then businesses to search for them. And that way you can find a job in your field. So we're trying to match these things together. So I really hope you're on board for this. So let's see, first, I'll guide you a little bit through the website. So this is our homepage. If you're not registered, if you scroll down, we will read a little bit about what District 297 is about. And then it will explain to you how it works. So it's very simple. You can register and create your own personal or company profile. And then after, you'll have the full access to the website. Then you can search and find your next opportunity or team member. You can also connect with companies or other community members through our forum, where you can exchange ideas or find people with the same ideas as you, and hopefully you can connect with each other and it becomes something. So that would be ultimately very great. So if we try to log in now, because if we're not logged in, we cannot see all the members. So we do this for privacy reasons. And we go to the opportunities page. You can see that we're still working out some glitches in the website and functionalities, but as you can see, we already have some opportunities that we can share with you. So we are looking for example, at District 297 for 2 internships positions for next year. There is a vacancy for the Aruba Investment Bank, also at the University of Aruba. And as we are uploading more and more vacancies, we hope that we can help you, and please spread the word. Maybe your friends that are also looking for an opportunity, that hopefully they can find it here. If we go to the members page, you can also see 2 examples. So I have my profile there, and we have one of our developers also on the website. And you can see what basically how your profile would look like. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to fill in your information, and so that you can be found. And again, this website is really specifically for the Aruban diaspora, which is why it's a bit different than from LinkedIn. So you can be more really finding your community members through this platform. All right. Yes. So we will publish this next week, I think, and we remain open for your feedback if you have any right now, or how you think we as District 297 can be of more service and value for the diaspora, and trying to make this connection and fighting this phenomenon of brain drain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilinda. And that's so exciting that the website's going to be up next week. I mean, in my own personal experience, that was something that seemed like such an obvious gap, that there wasn't a place for job postings. So thank you for doing this on behalf of the Aruban community and the young entrepreneurs out there. Now is an opportunity for questions, so you can raise your hand again. In the meantime, we'll be taking another poll. Thank you, everybody, for answering the question. I think we have quite a good number of new people who are interested in finding out about District 297. This is the time where you can digitally raise your hand if you have any questions for Marilinda or for Indra, or just a conversation you want to get started here. This is really the time where we can all come together for an open mic session for feedback about District 297, thoughts about brain drain, or questions for either of the panelists. So I have another question from Ryan Marapin. I'm gonna give you the permissions to speak. You're now able to speak.
Hey, Marilinda, I hope you can hear me. For some reason, my camera seems to be off, but I am too unskilled to figure the problem out. But I have a question. I'm actually more interested in your field because so you studied and now you're working on Aruba. And what kind of research areas are you busy with? So what are you trying to focus on, like innovation, financial development on the island, something related to that?
Yeah, well, I kind of switched careers a little bit to talk about myself, but so I started with economics, but now actually I'm more focused on agile coaching, and I this year I've been focusing on this platform. But the idea is that I will be handing it over slowly but surely and be more in the advisory role. What I will continue to do this coming year for District 297 is that we presented a little bit the research of Jonathan Upegui, and the idea is that we talk to him to do this study again and maybe even make it bigger. This is one of the internship opportunities that we have, and I will be then guiding this person. The reason for that is that the research was done about 10 years ago, and it's about time that we have new data, and he is more than willing to collaborate on this so that we can get new insights again, current insights, and see how we can use that for policy recommendations in that sense. I hope that
Oh,
answers
very interesting.
a little bit.
Sally asked a question in the chat. She said, I had a question about the possibility on the website for organizations who need volunteers to ask for that, if there would be a possibility to see this or if this was thought about.
Yes, this is possible. So you would sign up just as any other organization or just another member, and every member and every company has just the same opportunity to post a listing on the site, and then it will appear and people can apply. So that is definitely possible, and it doesn't have to always, because we also put collaborations out there. So collaborations is not necessarily a job, it's just you're looking for a partner to start a new venture with, and you need a specific someone with a specific set of skills, and then you see from there how you will work together. So doing this is definitely possible. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Celia. I have another question from Chris Fakun. I think this one is for Indra. Indra, you mentioned earlier that you have to be a builder in Aruba. And what happens if you don't have a big network in Aruba? I think Marilinda kind of answered this with the website launch, but Indra, do you have any thoughts on that? Of what in the status quo do you do if you don't have a big network in Aruba?
Yeah, sure. I have to say that one of the things that I really appreciated from my, let's say, education in the Netherlands is that what is very common in the Netherlands is for you to network. So if there's somebody that is interesting, if there's somebody that is in a position that is interesting towards you or to your future job that you want to have, you have the opportunity to get taught how do you approach that person. So you'll have literally events that teach you how to approach that person. For instance, in my case, it was always like, if you have a very important, let's say you want to meet Barack Obama, which probably is something I would definitely want to do. And you want to approach this person. And how are you going to do this? Well, you can imagine that everybody wants to meet Barack Obama, or a lot of people. And you get prepared into, first preparing yourself, preparing your 2-minute pitch, making sure that you ask the person first how the person's doing, showing that you're interested. So these are tools that are important for you to have and to keep for when you come to Aruba. And Aruba sometimes is different because it's also a traditional setting. So people kind of relate to you towards your family. Hey, who's your father? Who's your mother? Kenta po tata? Kenta po mama? And based on that, you kind of get into the network. But let's say if you don't have that, or let's say you really want to do it on your own, it's a matter of persevering in the sense of just keep trying. If you get no's, if you get maybes, just be consistent in wanting to reach a person or wanting to reach even a goal. So this is something that if you say, well, I don't have a big network on Aruba, I can't just ask my dad to refer to me to a person. Do your research, figure out where the person works, what was the last talk that the person had, or maybe article that the person's written, and then send that email. But send that email well prepared. I've done this myself with somebody that I found very important for anything that I wanted to do afterwards. And I made sure that I figured out what the person was doing, what the person published, where the person spoke. I made sure I prepared myself to actually know what is it I want from this person. Because when you look for instance, a coach, it's a two-way thing. You are asking the coach something, I want to be guided, but you also have to give them something like, okay, I'm getting a new perspective of a younger person, perhaps, etc., etc. So indeed, if you don't have that network or it doesn't come naturally, do the work. Prepare, figure out who the person is, but first of all, figure out what you want and then just go for it. Maybe the first time it's going to be a little awkward and you're probably going to get stuck in some stuff, but just go for it. And afterwards, it gets better and it also pays off. I have people that I have approached. I say in Criollo Papimento, onhandig, nervous. I thought I totally messed it up while prepared. That later on, they said, you know what? I appreciated that you dared to come towards me and ask me.
I think that's really great advice, Indra. And maybe for our professionals out there that are watching this, this could be a space as well for you to give advice. We're not here about lecturing anyone. It's just an open, shared space to exchange information and maybe make connections. I have a question here from Gary Dane. And this one could be from Marilinda or Indra, whichever feels most connected to this one. It's, is there a culture clash you guys experienced moving back, or perhaps work-related culture crash? I know, Marilinda, you worked in the Netherlands, so maybe you could talk about that difference. He goes on to say, because for him as a UX designer, there is a lot of room for a lot of improvement in Aruba, but his perception is that because of the attitude for not changing, that there's a lot of promising people that might not take the jump or lose that motivation to change and make things for the better. How was that experience for you?
Well, I've come back to Aruba twice. So I would say the first time when I finished my studies and I came to work here, I definitely experienced that. I hadn't really worked in the Netherlands then. I had an internship at the central bank there. And when I came here, it was a very open culture. You know, they would tell me, don't say u, you know, just say you and just be informal. And when you come to Aruba, it's different. You have to be more formal. Otherwise, you know, you're stepping on people's toes. And I definitely did that. And it was not appreciated. I have to say, then after 4 years, I went back to the Netherlands. I reschooled myself and I came back. I feel a different environment now. I don't know if it's just me that's changed, or now there's, even in this pandemic, it feels like a fertile ground for change. So, and that gets me excited for what I do as an agile coach, is teach a new way of working. So I definitely understand where you're coming from, and it's not always easy, but I have to say that I'm pleasantly surprised at how open people are to this new way if you introduce it in a very respectful manner. Because I'm not trying to teach people how to do their job in like a detailed way, because they know their the inhoud, how do you say, so the context of what they're working. I'm just trying to get the process off the ground. And I think as a UX designer, you probably work in a slightly similar way. So that would be my advice, to be very, approach it very respectfully, to have less cultural clash. But you'll probably feel it. Things are, I mean, slower here, so you have to get used to that. Going to the supermarket takes a long time, but there are other things that are really nice. You get to go to the beach every weekend. You see your family, you know. So for me, it's definitely nice to be here.
Thank you, Marilinda. And I can relate to that as well. I think the longer you are away from Aruba, the more you realize that Aruba is so unique and has such unique qualities that you can't find anywhere else in the world. I've learned that the more that I travel, the more I love Aruba. We have one last question from Juan Pablo Aguirre Broca. So I am unmuting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I guess this is more of a suggestion in the form of a question for the developers of the platform. Have you thought of also including companies that just want research? Because from my experience, also just being a student, I know of many others that would like to find a research topic, but sometimes it's difficult. And sometimes we want to work with something that is very practical. So me, for example, studying public management, I would like to know what the Aruban government would like me to research for them. So how about including an option where companies can post these like very broad questions that can be then used for research?
Yes, I like this idea very much. Thanks. We do have a forum, which is not specific. We can use it for this. It's not specifically for that, but perhaps we can, to start, create a topic for this, and then as we move on with developing the website, because this is not the end phase, we will keep developing it. We can maybe add a much nicer specific place to add research topics, and the company posing it. So I can maybe become an opportunity, or
Yeah.
maybe they just want to provide you with the data, so you can do your research. Indeed, instead of doing just a research that hangs in the air, you can actually do something that can help an institution here. I think
Awesome.
that's really great. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, Juan Pablo. I'm right now writing my research paper, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I hope somebody uses this. Like, I'm working so hard on it. I hope that it can benefit to some company or an organization in some way.
Totally.
Although this is all the time we have to wrap up this session, but if you have any additional questions, you could write your questions in the chat and leave your email address to connect you to the appropriate speaker. Thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your involvement and commitment to Aruba's future and well-being. Find the link to our website in this chat and please check it out. We will be launching it, so stay pending to our social media. And also, thank you so much for supporting District 297 all year long. This has been a very interesting and new year, but have wonderful holidays and we will see you next year.